Marley from the Energy Boutique with your energy and ascension forecast for Sunday, October 26th to Saturday, November 1st. So last week was a banger of a week because, of course, we were tying up the loose ends of Libra season, and we did that under the influence of the new moon in Libra on the final day of Libra season, popping off at 28 degrees, the first of 6 new moons that are going to be taking place at this perfection degree. We definitely felt that pressure, and of course it was hard to pinpoint what actually created that pressure, because not only did we have that new moon in Libra popping off, but just hours later we had Neptune retrograde back into his rulership, now standing at a 29 degree in Pisces energy. And of course, that wasn't enough. Just hours after that, we had the sun, who of course was sitting at that 29th critical crisis karmic degree for the remainder of Libra season, shift into Scorpio season. And that took place very late on the 22nd, very early on the 23rd, depending on your time zone. But of course, we were in the dark phase of the moon. The moon shifted into Scorpio energy almost right after we had that new moon peak. And it kind of set the tone for the darkness, the funk that we had to sit in. Well, the new moon popped off, well, Neptune shifted, and well, we entered into the death ending and closure chapter of the zodiac wheel, which of course is Scorpio season. So it was a little bit of a bumpy ride, and I definitely noticed the collective kind of tap into the whininess that, of course, the tail end of Libra season turned the volume up on. We kind of reached this quote unquote breaking point, which if you did, you're exactly where it is that you need to be. You need to be done with certain aspects of your life. You need to be absolutely exhausted and sick of your own shit in order for a change and a transformation to happen. And because we are in Scorpio season, where all of those things are the name of the game, we are going to be going through a lot of those shadow parts of self. We've already seen the power issues, the control issues, the darker narratives pop off on the global stage. And if you're being real and raw and vulnerable with yourself, you've likely noticed a lot darker of a narrative, a lot more of a negative type of mood, attitude, and disposition. Now, all of that is 100% needed and natural for this particular part of the chart that we're moving through. But you almost have to kind of piece it together that yes, Scorpio season is going to be dark. It is going to be intense. It is going to be heavy. And of course, now that we're in this weird ass series of having all of the new moons popping off at the 28th degree to complete this astrological calendar, we literally have to move through the whole entire season before we're going to be gifted with that green light go ahead to create something new. New moons are a reset. It's a time of bridging the gap between the endings and the beginnings. But because we have to go through the whole dang season in order to get to that 28th degree, we're literally being drugged, if you will, through the darkness, through the trenches of the season before we're going to have that reset energy. So when I say to you that we all have to boss up, we have to do better, we have to be better, I know you're probably exhausted, not only of, hearing that, but also trying to dig deep within yourself to find that extra little bit of warrior type of energy to kind of charge through and take that leadership role and dig you out of that dark pit. When I say to you that the pressure is on, I don't mean to scare you, but we are coming to the end of this year of 9. We are going to be put through an acceleration of this pressurized system in order for people to boss up, for them to get their shit together. And because we are kind of wrapping up October here this week, I guess I should talk about what we have coming at us here this week, but because we're wrapping up October, we're moving into November. November is the 11th month, according to the fake ass calendar that we all live by, which means that we have the ability to tap into some creator aspects. 11 is the master builder, the master creator number. November is going to be a hell of a ride. Typically speaking, in previous years, November's kind of a quiet month. We're picking up the pieces, if you will, from the fluctuations and adjustments that usually pop off in Virgo season and in Libra season. This year, we have a pressurized system moving through the month of November. It is back to back to back to back to back to back to back energy events in order for us to boss up, in order for us to get our shit together. There is no rest. There is no whining. There is no crying. When I say that, you're probably going to say, well, I'm going to whine and cry through the whole thing. Well, that's your choice, but that doesn't sound very boss, doesn't sound very empowered. I am going to invite you to flip the script on that because we have some serious work to do. So let me just back up for a second. Let me talk about what we got going on this week. Yes, we're going to be bridging the gap between October, which was a vibration of 1, new beginnings, initiating new identities, really thinking about the new steps that need to be taken in order to align with the long-term goal, vision, and dream. We are going to be moving into November, which again is that 11 energy. If you want to kind of reduce that to a single digit, we're dealing with 2. 2 is building and creating. It's stabilizing. It is recognizing what needs to change in our worth and our value, what needs to change in our routines, what needs to change in our relationships, what needs to change in our financial sector. And surprise, surprise, we are under the umbrella of Scorpio season, which is all about change and transformation. But you got to get real with what needs to end and die. You got to boss up and do the hard things. And many of us have been running from, resisting, avoiding those hard parts. And we're coming to a particular point where there's nowhere else left to run. You cannot turn a blind eye. You cannot bury your head in the sand. We are coming to the final months of 2025, which again are accelerated, are pressurized in order for the last little hurrah to actually activate the energies, the frequencies within us to set us up for a brand new opportunity to boss up, to be empowered, to activate those creator abilities as we move into the new year. But the bridge from October to November is littered with a couple of major energetic events. I want to talk specifically about the 29th. We have Mercury moving into Sagittarius energy, which is going to be a lot better for the headspace. So just a couple more days of having Mercury be in the Scorpio energy, which is activating a lot of negative ass thoughts, a lot of darker topics and themes. And you're going to see this last little hurrah, specifically when Mercury is sitting at 29 degrees in Scorpio the day before the 29th. You're going to see a lot of people kind of succumb to their mental health issues. Scorpio energy, death endings and closures in order for a resurrection, a renewal, and empowerment energy to take over. Some people aren't going to have the patience to actually see that resurrection take place. And although that's a dark topic and theme and a scary thought for most people that are kind of on the verge of some mental health issues and crises at this particular point in time, we all have the ability to use the struggles, the dark parts, the shitty hands in which we've been dealt to either support and encourage us to be better or to let those things have power and control over us. And so let that be a good reminder as you're moving through the course of this week of how much power you're allowing your thoughts to have over you, how much control you allow those thoughts to have over you, and whether or not you are giving too much power and control away to those particular thoughts and where it is that you can take that power and control back. We all have the ability to flip the script in the most positive of ways. You just have to choose and decide. And I know it sounds pretty easy, pretty simple, especially when you're in the depths of your darkness and having a little bit of a mentee bee. But at the same time, we are being tested on the strength of our mental and emotional abilities. You cannot activate your creator abilities and be a co-creator of New Earth if you are not strong enough to eliminate the darkest parts, the demons in your head. Okay, so this is kind of like the last little hurrah, the last little exam, if you will, to see if you're worthy enough of having your creator abilities activated and being brought online. The last thing that we want as a collective is to have a bunch of unstable, not so happy, not so healthy people in charge of the new earth in which we're trying to build. We know what we're going to get if we allow that to happen. It's the exact world that we're looking to deconstruct right now. Power hungry, power tripping, negative ass fear-based programming that created this particular reality that we're now looking to flip the script upon. So I do kind of say that with a lot of caution because, again, mental health is no joke. But at the same time, we are going through a very accelerated process right now in the activation of particular parts and strands of our DNA that if you're not strong enough to house that particular frequency, that's really going to be telling on where it is that you're going to find yourself either at the end of this year or at the entrance of the next. Now, Mercury moving into Sagittarius is the light at the end of the dark tunnel, is going to give us a lot more, I'm going to call it hope, optimism, if you will, a lot more positivity when it comes to thinking about potential outcomes. So we definitely have that going for us. But it's also going to illuminate where it is that we have to kind of step into a brand new truth about our abilities to have power and control over our thoughts, over our emotions, over our energy, our patterns, our behaviors. This is also going to be an interesting dynamic because, in case you didn't know, Mercury will be retrograding in the Sagittarius energy and will be slipping back into the Scorpio energy. So this is going to be a true testament, a true test, if you will, to your mental discipline. Now, that's not all. We have the first quarter moon popping off just hours after Mercury actually shifts into that Sagittarius energy. And this first quarter moon is going to be popping off at 6 degrees, 30 minutes of Aquarius energy. So this is our very first action and decision point based off of that new moon in Libra that many people still haven't semi-recovered from. We have the positive part of the moon in Aquarius allowing us to emotionally detach so that we can act as the observer and kind of see where it is that we're getting in our own damn way, where it is that we can kind of see the forest past the trees, where it is that we can start seeing where we have to think outside of the box, coming up with solutions that maybe, would help our current situation and circumstance. But this Aquarius energy is very focused on the future. And right now we have to be spending the time to focus on what could possibly be that future that is going to spark excitement and inspiration and ignite something more powerful within us, not only for us to keep trucking on and pushing through the bullshit in order to actually get there, but to build up the motivation, the determination, the tenacity to actually do the hard parts, which many people are resisting very, very heavily here right now. So we have two major events taking place that's going to have a major, major effect on our headspace. And so again, let me just reassure to you that if you're struggling in the mental plane and the thoughts are pretty dark and you're having obsessive and fixating type of looping patterns and narratives and flashbacks or whatever the case may be, you just have to hold on. You have to hold on until the 29th at least, when the game changes yet again. The cautionary part is that some people think that, temporary thoughts and temporary feelings are going to last forever. And that's when they make a permanent action that is totally going to mess up the possibilities of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. So, of course, we have Halloween popping off on the 31st. And although that's not an astrological event, it is very, very connected to our ancestors. It's very connected to the spirit realm. It's very connected to the higher realms of intelligence. And as much as I hate to call it the veil, I guess that is the common terminology that everybody is talking about. The veil gets very thin. Now, I don't know about y'all, but the veil to me is always thin. And I would say it is more likely, or it makes more sense to say, that the curtain between realms just absolutely gets pulled back and essentially drops. There is no veil. We are able to feel that interdimensional bleed. We're able to have flashbacks from ancestors. We are able to receive insights and downloads from the higher realms of intelligence. And to make things even more mystical here this year, first of all, it's popping off on a Friday. I think that's a very interesting dynamic. Secondary to that, the moon is going to be in Pisces. And so where the Pisces energy is very mystical, it does kind of push us outside of the boundaries of this earthly realm and what makes sense and what has boundaries and what is tangible. I just feel like there's going to be a lot of spontaneous amounts of healing, spontaneous flashbacks, prophetic dreams popping off, intuitive insights, a lot of weird ass shit is going to be taking place on Halloween here this year. And of course, the transition into November is, it feels very, I'm going to call it still. especially the very first day of November. It's like the calm after the storm, if you will, but it's also the Day of the Dead. So there is, again, this remembrance, this ancestral pull back, this nostalgic remembrance of, parts of our DNA that walked the earth long before our flesh suits ever did. And a lot of this is kind of pouring into the recalibration phase that we're currently in as we just brought this new ego programming online, and we're still kind of weeding through the glitches, if you will, of what needs to stay and what needs to go. There is a huge release of a lot of generational trauma, ancestral trauma as well, that gets released under the right kind of energies. And I would say that Halloween this year is definitely setting the scene for a lot of spontaneous amounts of healing, not only in the memories, not only in the energetic cords that we're currently connected to the past, but in our DNA as well. And that's what we're here to do. This whole Ascension process is about healing every single part of us. And we store not only the pain and trauma in our DNA, but we also store our superhuman capabilities, our creator abilities. And we're moving into the month of November, which is supposed to be the last kind of hurrah test in this particular cycle to see again how much power and control we have over our energy, and we have over our mental plane, and we have over our emotions and our actions. Because that 11 energy does bring on the dualistic DNA strand. If you're looking at the number 11, it's represented of the pillars. It's very dualistic in nature. And when we're talking about bringing new sequences of our DNA online, that requires a certain amount of healing of the junk and the gunk stored in our DNA to prevent us from bringing these superhuman capabilities online. So if I'm talking woo-woo, or if you think that I'm talking woo-woo, all the power to you. You are definitely, entitled to that belief system. But when you get down to the nitty gritty of the amount of memory that is stored in your DNA, the amount of power that is stored in your DNA, if you understand and you start connecting the dots, what's going on in the world right now is going to make a lot more sense to you when you understand that this isn't woo-woo, that this is actually science, that this is actually frequency, that this is actually the manipulation, if you will, of our DNA in order to stunt our growth in all kinds of different ways. And this particular ascension process, as it is reclaiming the empowerment in our ancestral line, that's when the border, the boundaries between woo-woo and science actually get blurred. And we are at the particular point in the evolution of humanity right now where in order to prove spirituality, you need science. And you're going to understand that science and spirituality exist in tandem. They go together. You cannot have one without the other. And we are going to see more and more, especially as we get deeper into having Pluto move through Aquarius energy, where innovation and science and technology are definitely the name of the game here. You're going to start seeing more and more about how we're using science to prove this woo-woo-ness that many people are still kind of, stuck in. Anywho, I digress. This week, we are starting the week off with the moon in Sagittarius, which again is as hopeful and wishful and optimistic and positive as you could possibly get. And under this, dark Scorpio umbrella, if you will, that's going to be favorable for a lot of people. We move into that Capricorn energy, though, and that's when I think the negative Nancy narrative is going to get to a lot of people, specifically because that's when Mercury is going to be sitting at that 29th degree in Scorpio in anticipation for the shift into Sagittarius on the 29th and that first quarter moon popping off in Aquarius just hours after. But we end the week off with that moon in Pisces. So when we look at the zodiac wheel from Sagittarius to Pisces, first of all, it's mutable to mutable, which means that we're going to be presented with a lot of information, insights, details this week that have us changing and transforming, because we are in Scorpio season, the way that we feel, not only in the present moment, but the way that we feel about the potentialities of some of the opportunities that are currently piecing together on the horizon. And we have to kind of, again, lean into the fact that not only are we bridging month to month, so October to November, but we're also bridging the endings that are needed in order for the beginnings to take place. Again, another very intense Scorpio topic and theme. The moon in Pisces is where we have to wrap things up, where we have to make sense of things, where we have to come to a certain term of acceptance. We have to understand that the Piscean energy represented by the fish, one fish is going around building something new, the other fish is coming right behind it and undoing that particular work. And it is where there are no boundaries between the mental and emotional, between the physical and the spiritual, where everything gets blended and blurred together in order for us to be able to heal certain parts of self, heal certain energetic cords, certain parts of our DNA, in preparation for a brand new beginning to take place. Now, when the moon shifts into Aries energy, that's when we enter into a brand new emotional cycle. And that's going to be a positive thing for those that are struggling right now, because the lingering effects that are coming out of the whininess that many people found themselves in at the tail end of Libra season, that whininess goes away. That victimhood mentality goes away. The mentee be, the emotional breakdowns, they go away, and we start bossing up under the influence of the moon in Aries energy. Why is that, you may ask? Well, because Mars rules over Aries energy, as does Mars co-rule over the Scorpio energy. We tap into a new warrior type of spirit. We understand our identity. We understand our power. We understand our abilities a lot better, a lot stronger under that moon in Aries cycle. So again, another reason why, if you're struggling as of late and struggling throughout the course of this week, that activation on the 29th definitely going to help you out, give you that light at the end of the dark tunnel. And then B, we got to kind of edge our way into this next emotional cycle that begins, not this week, but next week, when we're kind of, dipping into November. But we are coming into a new month here this week, which means that, new forecasts coming at you, new zodiac horoscopes and forecasts guides coming at you as well. There's a new moon guide available for download on my website as well. We are about to hit that first quarter moon coming at us in Aquarius here on the 29th. So we will be moving through the moon guide at that particular time. If you don't have that downloaded and ready to go, I'm going to recommend you do that as well. So let's jump into this week's Ascension symptoms. First of all, I just want to take a minute to talk about this mental health issue. Now, I know everybody's struggling. I get it. I know everybody's at their wits' end. I know. I get it. You're supposed to be. And that's kind of the thing that I don't understand why people don't understand. Like, you're supposed to feel like this right now. You're supposed to be at your wits' end. You're supposed to be sick of your life. You're supposed to be sick of particular situations and aspects in your life. This is what Scorpio season is all about. And I'm going to take a little bit of a hint and a clue from something that kind of popped off on my Patreon. Beautiful, beautiful soul member in there had just commented on one of the daily energy forecasts, because I do talk, every single day about needing to boss up and needing to do the hard things and, all of these things. And this beautiful soul had said, when are things going to change? When do we get a break? When do we get the rewards? Because, everybody's exhausted and everybody's kind of losing hope and everybody's losing steam. And although I get that, what people forget is that, everybody is so small-minded, thinking that this life, this incarnation is it, okay? When you put into respect that, it takes a long time for the good parts to come here in this lifetime, do you not all realize that we've done this for millennia? That this is probably the first lifetime that you actually were actively engaged in your healing journey? Do you know how many lifetimes it took for you to be this version of self? For you to actually learn to love yourself, to heal the parts of self? Do y'all realize that it's not this lifetime that you need to be concerned about? It's the overall expansion of the soul that runs this particular incarnation. So I understand ego, okay? We're all impatient. We all want the happiness now. We all want the breaks. We all want this. We all want that. But when you step back and you understand that this lifetime is but a speck of dirt in comparison to all of the grains of sand that actually have to come together to actually make a beach, this this lifetime, yes, significant. So I don't want to diminish that because it is important. We're doing the work, blah, blah, blah. But it's really not as significant as a lot of people give that type of power to. Again, this is probably the first lifetime that you chose yourself. This is the first lifetime that you actually thought that you were worthy and deserving of love and happiness. This is probably the very first lifetime that you chose to get out of that really shitty, toxic marriage or relationship or whatever the case may be. And so when you put into perspective, like, when are we going to get a break? Well, yeah, we're gifted with little sprinkles of rewards and breaks in every incarnation. But the real break, the real reward, the real rest period that most people are yearning for is when we return back to spirit, back to source. And I know that that's a hard concept to really fathom. And I know this is a very hard thing to talk about because that just encourages people to kind of want to, cut this trip early. That's not the thing to do. We're in it to win it. Okay. You have to have presence. You have to have energy. You have to have patience. And so, like, one of the analogies that I used in order to kind of paint the picture here, we're in Scorpio season right now. We are essentially providing a death ending and closure to who it is that we had to be under the scripts of the situations and circumstances that we had to be a part of. And what we're looking to do is to give birth to this new version of self wholeheartedly. Yeah, we just got the mental programming downloaded in Virgo season and through the eclipses, but Scorpio season is where we align the mind, body, and soul to that new version of self, to the core authentic truth of who it is that we've always been, the remembrance that we are currently going through in order to activate those particular sequences in our DNA strands in order for us to release the holding patterns of the pain and trauma that ancestrally speaking we've been carrying for millennia, so that we can get rid of that junk and that gunk and heal that particular part of self so that we can open ourselves up to who it is that we've always been when we're empowered, when we have our creator abilities online. And so the analogy is that, again, like I spoke about last week, if we're going to use the caterpillar analogy. So here we were born a caterpillar. We were told to do caterpillar things. We've been moving our little, legs around the earth, just experiencing the life that a caterpillar is supposed to experience. And then all of a sudden the caterpillar realizes, holy crap, there's things flying up above. I wonder what their life is like. They get a totally different perspective. They get a totally different experience. What does the caterpillar do? He makes the decision that what he has chosen to experience as a caterpillar has now come to a very, very abrupt end, because he has an awareness that there's something better, there's something greater, that in the form in which he currently is as a caterpillar, he will never get to experience. So what does he do? He moves into the cocoon. He liquefies himself. He literally deconstructs himself, biologically speaking, making himself into a pile of absolute goo before he starts rebuilding and restructuring himself into the skeletal structure of a butterfly. That butterfly has to stick into that darkness of the cocoon until the butterfly is ready to break out. When that butterfly breaks out of the cocoon, he doesn't take immediate flight. He has to get used to this new identity, this new version of self. He has to flex his wings back and forth and really gain his bearings before he's ever able to take flight. And as I previously mentioned, we don't get to fly in Scorpio season. We get to test our wings, but the real flight takes off when we move into Sagittarius energy. And so, yes, we're talking about the caterpillar to the butterfly. That is a huge change. That is a huge transformation. I'm sure it hurts like hell to disintegrate yourself into a pile of goo and then rebuild yourself in a new skeletal structure that you didn't even know that you were capable of building. I'm sure that is not pleasant. I'm going to give you another analogy before I wrap it all up and piece it together for you here. Let's say that you're pregnant. Let's say that you're carrying a child, and all of a sudden your water breaks and you're about to go into, the birthing process. Now, if you speak to any woman walking this face of the earth that ever gave birth to a child, you could ask them if it was fun, if it was easy, and you are going to get some looks. It is not fun. It is not easy. You literally get to a point where you yourself want to give up. You want to die. Okay? But you can't. You're about to give birth to new life. You don't find yourself in the delivery room pushing, having this little head crown at the worst part of the pain that you've ever experienced and decide, you know what, I'm not having fun. I think I'm just going to peace out. I'm going to go home now. Okay? No. You dig deep. Okay? Just when you think you got nothing left in you, you dig deep. And you find that part of self that comes from the deepest, darkest parts within you. And you push and you scream and you surprise yourself at the strength in which you didn't even know you have. And you give birth to that child. Okay, so whether you are giving birth to this new version of self as a butterfly or you are giving birth to a brand new baby, that process is not fun. It is not cute. It does not feel good. But you have to continue through with it. You have to push through it. You have to give birth one way or another, which requires a huge realization on what you're made of. Maybe you're made up of a pile of goo as the caterpillar turns into the butterfly. Maybe you're made up of an amount of strength that you didn't even know was living inside of you while being at the exhaustion point, being at the point of no return, and digging deep in order to get that baby out of you. Either way, this is Scorpio season. So if you want to bitch, you want to complain, you want to whine, you want to cry, you go right to it. But at the end of the day, you are still being pressurized to change and transform from one identity to the next, from one form into the other. And it requires pain. It requires suffering. It requires a great amount of strength that you don't believe that you have in you until you're put in that situation. You're left with no choice and you got to boss up and do it anyways. So that little analogy, that little story, take it, as it is, pluck from it what you will. But at the end of the day, the mission, the statement, the whole meaning that I want to just kind of pass along to you is if you want to cry through it, you go right ahead. Either way, we are going through a death, ending, and closure in order for a rebirth, a resurrection, a renewal to take place. Empowerment energy doesn't really come until you are at the breaking point, not realizing that you don't really have a choice in the matter. You have to continue to push through. So for everyone that is struggling right now, when is it going to be over? Well, technically when you die. And I hate telling people that because some people are so unstable that they'll take that literally and they'll just fast forward their particular soul contract into a soul contract that they're not going to want to agree to once they realize it's too late on the other side and they did what they did. And again, they can't take no take backsies, right? So what I'm getting at is that if you are low on energy, if you are whining and crying and just like, when is this going to end? Congratulations, you're exactly where it is that you need to be. Okay? So you have to reframe your mind around that. You have to use that particular exhaustion and struggle in order to build yourself up instead of choosing to allow it to break yourself down. That is a choice that each and every single one of us have each and every single day. So if you're on the darker parts of life right now, I invite you to flip the script, to empower yourself, to actually see the positives, to see the opportunities for change, for transformation, for empowerment. If you're already, in that boss up type of energy, you know what? You're already in it. Once you've met that part of yourself, the struggles of life don't become as intense as they once were because you know that you can handle anything. You know that anything thrown at you, you're just going to make better. You know that there is really nothing that you have to fear because you have stared your fears directly in the face and you have overcome them. And that is just part and parcel of knowing thyself, healing thyself, and tapping into the warrior type of abilities to know that this life is all in what you make it. And life is going to be throwing bricks at you from the time you come out the womb. And if you're going to let those bricks break you down, all the power to you. I myself, I'm going to take those bricks and I'm going to build a mansion because that's just how I roll. And I would welcome you to roll in the same kind of fashion. Okay, so story time. Story time is over. The reason why I wanted to give you that story time is because emotionally and physically speaking and mentally as well, we're exhausted and we need to be there at the beginning of Scorpio season in order to be so tired and fed up and just at our wits' end with our own damn bullshit, that a major change, a major transformation has to take place. That's how humans work. Nobody in human history has ever said, oh, I'm going to totally just revamp my whole life and my whole identity out of a place of comfort. Okay, you have to have your back against the wall before you're ever willing to make that kind of change. That's just how humans operate. So the head pressure, the mental fog, the negative ass narratives are definitely going to be a challenge for a lot of people here this week. Again, I'm going to welcome you to just continue to push through it, because there is going to be a major change in that headspace, in those darker narratives, once the 29th comes to pass. What I would also want to say is that there's some major downloads that we will be receiving here this week. Again, it's a magical time in Scorpio energy, right? Like Scorpio season, specifically because we have Saturn and Neptune and the nodes of the moon, well, the North Node anyways, in a water sign along with Jupiter. Like there's a lot of grand trines taking place here. We watched it take place with Mercury and Mars as they entered into the Scorpio energy early. Now the sun is moving through it. We get a lot of beautiful aspects, really bringing new information and insights online. But the downloads here this week are going to be super intense to the point where your ear might feel like it's going to explode. Like your eardrum may actually feel like it's going to explode. The high frequency decibels that these downloads are coming in this week is higher octave than we're used to. And this is going to be piercing our ears, piercing our headspace, so much so that it may feel like you're having a brain aneurysm and your brain is about to explode. And I'm not even over exaggerating. When I say to you that we're going to be receiving visual and audio downloads like we've never received them thus far ever before, this week, I am not over exaggerating. Your visual field, when you have this downloading, piercing sound come through your eardrum and you think it's going to bust out and explode, you may also have the visual download happen at the same time, which is going to be like splotchiness in your visual field. Now, let me also just say that the amount of energies coming in this week, very, very connected to Uranus. Uranus is currently sitting at a 0 degree in Gemini energy. That's all kinds of electricity. And it's all kinds of frequency that isn't necessarily a comfortable vibratory match to the vessel that we're currently working on in our physical form. And so the intensity, specifically with the first quarter moon in Aquarius popping off, because Uranus rules over that Aquarius energy, specifically because we're in Scorpio season where a major change and transformation has to happen in our inner realm before we can actually make those changes in our outer realm happen. And that Uranus energy at the raw potentiality of a 0 degree, this is like debilitating downloads. It is jolting our central nervous system at the same time. So we do have to expect that there's going to be electrical shocks, electrical disruptions, not only in our physical form, but like in our, physical realms. Like technology has been wackadoodle anyways, but I think it's going to actually get amplified to a new level of glitchiness. I think that if you are to look at the global systems, like last week when I said, pay attention to what happens prior to that new moon in Libra, and then we had the Amazon cloud or database or whatever glitch out with all of the apps that Amazon owns that most people didn't even know were all connected. They were all down. That wasn't a glitch out. That wasn't even a reset. That was a hijacking of the new, let's call it, web coding that we are going to be moving into. And that's not a good sign. Let me just say to you, not a good sign. I did tell you on the global stage, we were going to get indicators prior to that new moon transition of some potential timelines that were going to indicate to us where we were going from here. The fact that that Amazon quote unquote glitch or blackout happened in the way that it did, not a good sign at all. Not trying to fearmonger, but if you know, you know. Anywho, the tingling that we experienced last week through our extremities specifically, but through the physical body because of the central nervous system, that's also going to continue to be activated here this year, or this week, should I say? Well, yes, this year. They're turning the juices up. When I say, when you're going to say, well, who's they? Well, that's a loaded question. We do have a natural evolution of the electricity coursing in through the solar activations that are a natural and unfolding type of process. But of course, there is a small, semi-large, dark shadow group that is trying to block those natural sun codes out with their own electrical warfare situation that they're turning up. And I just feel like I hesitate to talk about some of this because some people, again, with their situation, with their mental health, can't really fathom and understand without invoking a huge amount of paranoia and fear in them that we are all being triggered and activated, electrically speaking, as well from a man-made source, just as well as we are from a natural inorganic source as well. At this point, our biofields really don't care whether it is a natural currency or a unnatural currency because it hurts just the same. There is a little bit of a difference, and I'm sure if you have been doing energy work, you can tell whether it is an artificial activation or a natural activation. Either way, it still hurts. We're definitely going to feel the volume. The evildoers are turning up that volume here this week. That's why I say that there's a lot of people like struggling with their mental health because that's all frequency based. And there are energetic weapons out there that are being triggered and activated to kind of vibrate at the frequency and resonance as some people are naturally aligned to that don't have a lot of stability in their mental plane. If you want to talk about mind programming, well, there you go. Dig into that. The electrical charges are coming in hot this week, and it's going to be debilitating in our audio fields and for some of us in our visual fields as well. It is going to be central nervous system activation, and it is going to be fine-tuned in order to really hurt the headspace. Now, we know crown activation, we know third eye activations as well. But we are seizing up in our upper chakras, if you will. And what I mean by that is that we're holding the upper part of our bodies a lot more intensely, a lot more. It's just a rigid holding. It's not a natural position. Our shoulders are almost like crunched up by our ears. We're holding our jaw space because we are essentially preparing for impact. And when you tense up and when you feel like the ball is going to drop and when you aren't comfortable and when you're not sure that you can handle whatever it is that life is going to be throwing at you, you tense up. And so again, in the past couple of weeks, we've been noticing a lot of shoulder and neck discomfort because of the emotional weight that we're carrying on our shoulders. This week, it's not necessarily about the weight that we're carrying. I think you're going to find more stiffness than anything else. Maybe you're not able to turn your head to the right. Maybe you're not able to turn your head to the left. Maybe it hurts when you put your head up. Maybe it's hurting putting it down. All of those are indicators on where the energetic weight is being concerned. But a lot of this is because we're having a hard time looking back. We're having a hard time looking forward. We're having a hard time staying present. We're having a hard time realizing that the world as we know it is ending right in front of our eyes, that the world as we don't know it yet is about to be built right in front of our eyes, and we don't know what to focus on. Again, there's like this bridge that's being torn into two different, pieces or parts of self or whatever the case may be. And those that have been resisting and avoiding doing the work are going to feel these ascension symptoms even more intense than those that have been doing the work. But nonetheless, there is going to be more of a tense up type of energy in our physical bodies because of the evolution, recalibration of these upper chakra systems. And because of that, we're holding our neck, our shoulders in, a crunched up position, but that's translating to the jaw. And the jaw, like I said, we clench our jaw in anticipation for an impact. We're also clenching our jaw because we've been biting our tongue on a lot of different things that we want to say, that we're not sure if we should say, that we have to say. We got to get it out of our body, but we're not ready to do that right now. And so we're holding that tension in our jaw space as well. There aren't going to be as many, I'm going to call it teeth issues or gum issues. But what I will say is that there's a funky ass film taken over on the tongue and on the teeth. I don't even know if it's the same as the sweater situation as we sometimes experience in the past. But there's like this, specifically when Mercury moves into that Sagittarius energy, it's going to feel like you burnt your tongue in that gross, like yucky film taste that happens after you burn your tongue. That's going to linger for a couple of days. So we definitely want to be aware of that. Even though we're in a water season, and if you've taken a look at the elemental energy profile of the day-to-day, we're very high, very dominant in water. And it makes no sense to me other than the fact that we are going through and emotionally and mentally processing a lot of information, why we're so damn dehydrated. And there's a dehydration taking place like in our organs. And so like your stomach is probably going to be a little bit more acidic this week because we're low on the water that we need to have in order to dissolve some of that acidity. We have a lot of dryness taking over in our skin. Our skin is just screaming for more moisture. We just have an imbalance of water energy. And usually in a water season, we're taking on water for whatever reason. And I think it just has a lot to do with the universe pressing the fast forward button and putting us in an accelerated pressurized state in order to get our shit together in these last few months here of 2025. We're burning through a lot of energy processing emotion and processing new thoughts and processing, just a lot of the endings and closures that have to come full stop before we can begin again. So, that's going to have a major effect just, on our whole physical body. Like our skin is screaming for moisture. Our eyes, let's talk about the eyes for a second. The dryness in our eyes, the stinging in our eyes because of how dry that they actually are. We're having a hard time seeing our lives in the way that they're actually at right now and the potentialities that we want to see happen. And we're kind of butting heads. Many of us are recognizing that there is a part of us that wants a lifestyle, that wants a whole damn goal, vision, and dream that is beautiful. It's inspiring. It makes us feel warm and fluffy on the inside. But it is so different from the life that we're living that it's almost like a dream in itself, something that most people don't think is even possible or tangible for us to manifest. And so when you're looking at your life, basically, you're stuck in it. That's a hard pill to swallow. When you also have this beautiful, vision of what could possibly be, and you yourself don't believe that you could ever be living in that life, that's hard on the head, it's hard on the eyes, it's hard on the heart. And so our eyes are going through this like weird transition where we're straining to see the truth. We're straining to see through the darkness. Scorpio season, because it is about, the shadow parts of self. You know how sometimes when you're walking through your house at night and there's no lights on or whatever, you can kind of see the outlines and the shapes of stuff, but you kind of have to squint. You really have to kind of, I'm going to say, tap into your other senses in order to get the lay of the land. That's kind of what we're doing through Scorpio season. It's like there's some ugly parts. There's some dumpsters that are on fire. We don't really want to look at them, but when we do look at them, we're going to get sucked into it. We're obsessed with it. We're fixated on the death and destruction. We don't want to look. We're squinting our eyes. It's almost like watching a horror movie where you close your eyes, but you're still kind of looking at the movie through your squinty eyes and your squinty fingers. There's a lot of strain going on in the eyesight because we're having a hard time seeing what actually is, and we're having an even harder time seeing what can't be. Now that can't be part, it could be in the future, but we know right now it can't possibly be right now. And that's a hard pill to swallow all in itself. So of course, we're holding a lot of tension in the upper body, but let me also just say specifically when the moon moves into Capricorn here between the moon in Sagittarius and that first quarter moon popping off in Aquarius, when the moon is in Capricorn energy, we're going to struggle with our lower extremities. There's going to be a lot of lower back issues, a lot of lower back pain. There's going to be knee tension, knee stiffness. There's going to be rigidity in the way that we walk. It's going to hurt. Our skeletal structure hurts when the moon is in Capricorn. A lot of that is due to the fact that Saturn rules over that Capricorn energy, and Saturn is all about structures, starting with the structures of how we're built in our human anatomy and the structures in which we build in our physical external lives. because we are in Scorpio season, taking a good look at the structure of our lives, trying to determine what parts of our lives need a death ending and a closure. It is a very, very hard time in the physical body to feel free, to feel like we are moving with happiness, with joy. There's a tension there. We're all clammed up. We're, again, preparing for impact. So that's not going to feel good, but there's a lot of energy surges that are going to help break up those particular tensions. Again, there's a lot of fear-based negative ass programming that gets triggered and activated when the moon is in Capricorn. We hold ourselves a little bit more intensely, a little bit more rigid when we are unsure or we are walking through life in fear. And a lot of that gets triggered and activated right before, again, Mercury moves into Sagittarius energy and that first quarter moon in Aquarius pops off. The energy surges are interesting here this week, I'll say. Yes, it does kind of align and correlate with a lot of the electrical zaps that are coming in, again, from the organic and artificial source. But the reason why I say that they're interesting is because in typical Scorpio fashion, just when we're at the depths of our darkness, just when we don't think we can take anymore, just when we think we want to light a match and burn the whole world down, that is the moment when we find ourselves ready to rise up and rise again. It's very much Phoenix energy. And so the energy surges are interesting because the minute that we have a breakdown is the minute that we rise again. The minute that we don't think we can take anymore, suddenly we're motivated, hell-bent, downwind, determined to get up, to dust ourselves off, to take action and make moves, to make sure that we don't find ourselves in that dark pit again. And it is going to be a stop and go energy. It isn't just going to happen once. We are going to have to find a sweet spot in that particular, energetic recalibration. But the one thing that I would say is probably going to be hardest on us this week is our mental plane. Now, of course, the minute that we have a mental plane activation, we have to drop it into the heart space and figure out how we feel about it. Because again, Scorpio season is aligning the mind, the body, the soul. We're not there yet. We're fresh into the Scorpio season. We have weeks of this to go. But the heart activations that are going to be taking place here this week are going to feel a little bit more tight. So tight chested, maybe like you can't breathe, maybe like there's an elephant sitting on your chest. And a lot of this is, again, we're holding our physical form, preparing for impact. We are very tense in the way that we are all like clamped up. Our muscles are going to be tensed up. And a lot of the aha moments, epiphanies, the mental shifting that is taking place is going to be immediately followed by the emotional processing in that heart space. And so, we are in a water season. Scorpio energy. I'm not going to say Scorpios don't cry because I do know some Scorpios that do, but I think that I myself, being a Scorpio, I don't cry much. And when I do cry, it's out of pure frustration and anger. And I think that many people here this week are going to find themselves having some sort of emotional reaction to the frustration and the anger that they feel. It's not necessarily heart activations like, oh my goodness, I'm so sad. It's more heart activations like, I am so effing sick of this. I am so done. I will not do this anymore. And that's the exact place that we need to be at in order for that warrior to rise up within us. So lean into the discomfort of those heart activations. Lean into that frustration. Sometimes you'll hear me say it quite often, Scorpio season, probably going to say it more often than not. Sometimes anger and frustration is a more motivating, more transformative fuel than love and passion. Okay, there's a very thin line between the two. And sometimes Scorpio energy will make you do things out of the pure frustration and aggravation of just not allowing things to continue the way that they've been going. And so again, it's going to be up to each and every single individual how they use this energy either against themselves or in their favor. Now, midweek, when we have that first quarter moon that again follows Mercury moving into the Sagittarius energy, the one thing that we're gifted with for like midweek to the end of the week is emotional detachment. So we're so intense. We feel like our mental planes are going to explode. We feel like our heart spaces are going to explode. We're so aware of every freaking fiber of our being. And then suddenly we have that first quarter activation, removes us from that first person type of situation. Now we're third party acting as the observer. And that's a beautiful thing because you can think a lot better when you're not, in this intense pressurized system. And so to have that activation that is going to download us with a huge amount of insight on how to problem solve, we're in the detective part of the zodiac wheel. Scorpio season is all about problem solving, but we have to do so honestly. We have to do so at a level, at a depth that is going to resolve the root problem, just not solve the Band-Aid or the wound care that we are treating said root problem with. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is weird ass injuries versus spontaneous healing. Now, I kind of already talked about the spontaneous healing part, mostly about the moon in Pisces on top of, the transition from Halloween into the Day of the Dead. Huge amount of healing. We're in Scorpio season. A lot of people don't really think about the regenerative part of Scorpio season, but we're able to regenerate not only our energy at a very fast, accelerated process, but we're able to regenerate our physical body as well. All of our organs have a particular time frame that they reset and recycle and renew and regenerate in. But I wanted to share just a weird ass story with you because it was weird as F and I still can't really explain it, but I'm not trying to explain it. I just wanted to share it with you. This week, just a day, I think day 2 ago, can't remember days, I was prepping food and I stabbed myself in my hand with a knife. And, when that happens, first of all, you're like, oh shit, how deep is it? Whatever. Completely removed it. I looked at my hand and there was blood pouring down the palm of my hand. Okay. Also, just so that you're aware, if you ever have hand injuries of any kind, pay attention to what finger the injury is taking place in. Mine was taking place underneath my pinky, so I knew that it was a mercurial issue, either the thoughts that I was having, what I needed to speak on, or what I wanted to speak on. Thus, again, why I'm building my freaking website, because I'm busting at the seams here, trying to keep all this information in my head without it exploding, but I digress. So I'm looking at my hand, and the blood is streaming down my hand. I have, if you've been with me for any amount of time and you know a little bit of my history, I've been put through the ringers when it comes to medical trauma, right? So I'm not the greatest fan of blood. I've watched literally, the better part of the blood in my body drain out of my body and be replenished with other people's blood in my body, which is a very traumatizing thing for me. And so when I see blood, I have a natural reaction of panic, trauma, blah, blah, blah. But of course, in those moments, you have to flip the script on your ego programming and you have to calm the central nervous system down and remind yourself that you're not in trauma, everything is fine. So anywho, I grabbed a piece of paper towel, I bunched it up, I'm trying to keep calm, I'm trying to think about other things because I don't want my physical body to go in a state of reactivity to this blood. And I put the knife down on the counter. I squeeze the paper towel and I go about my business. Again, trying to keep the physical body engaged, trying to keep my mental plane focused on something else other than the fact that I just stabbed myself with a knife. So about 10 minutes later, I go ahead and I thought I was calm enough to check on the wound. So I opened my hand that had this ball of paper towel that I was really stressing on. It was really a lot of pressure that I was putting on this paper towel. And I open up my hand and there's not one spot, I shit you not, there was not one spot of blood on the paper towel or on my hand. There was also not one indicator of a puncture wound on my palm. And in that moment, I was like, maybe I'm tripping balls. Maybe it didn't happen. Maybe I just imagined this. I know my hand is burning. I can feel the resonating, impact of that knife going through my hand. I look at the knife on the counter and the tip of it still has my blood on it. But yet I'm looking at the paper towel, there was blood running down my hand when I put that paper towel in my hand. There's no blood there. There's no puncture wound. There is no indicator that even happened other than the tip of the knife still being covered in my blood. And I thought that was weird. And all I said to myself was, okay, I'm either losing my mind or I just brought my regenerative abilities online. And that is a beautiful thing. And I went on my way. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because weird shit is about to happen. Okay, like weird instances like that are about to start happening on a regular basis to regular people, and you're not going to be able to make sense of it. It is going to be superhuman, and it is going to illuminate to you that you have superhuman abilities that you didn't even know. And I think that this is going to be the beginning of the empowerment series of people realizing that we're more than just flesh and blood. And that when you do the work and you're doing this energetic work day in, day out, day in, day out, when you're being presented with situations and circumstances for that ego programming to react and you override it, not only do you override it in your headspace and in your emotional space, you override it biologically speaking. It does not make sense that there wasn't a remnant of blood on that paper towel. It does not make sense that there is no puncture wound in my hand and that my hand did not hurt. It does not make sense that the only indicator that that even happened was the blood smeared tip of the knife. And if I told anybody this within 5 minutes of it happening, they would have called bullshit on me, because I can hold my hand up to you right now and you could not tell where that knife went through my hand. And I think that's weird as F. And I'm just sharing this with you because if it's happening to me, it's going to be happening to everybody. We're all collectively attached here. And so when these weird ass instances pop off, my message here is to not lean into the fear programming that your biological physical body system wants you to react in. I truly believe had I lost my shit, had I, started panicking, had I started allowing my body to shake, had I sat down and just focused on, oh my God, I just stabbed myself with a knife, I would have freaked out. I would have bled. I would have probably had to, get somebody to help me either bandage it up myself or consult whether or not I should go to the emergency room, which I would not do unless I absolutely had to do anyways. I did not freak out. I knew the possibility was there, but I was like, you know what? That's not going to do anything for me. I'm just going to breathe through it. I'm going to trust that my body is going to handle it and tell me what to do. I'm going to continue to meal prep because whether I stab my hand or not, I am going to have to eat. And I went on with my day. And like I said, I was just as surprised. I've had a lot of really weird, mystical shit happen to me in my lifetime. That is weird to me. That is going to be something that I remember for a long time because it is unheard of to stab yourself in the hand and literally see blood and then there's no blood and there's no wound. And guess what? It didn't happen. So yeah, I just thought that that was a very interesting story. I wanted to share that with you because weird ass shit, especially showing you your ability to heal the physical body without a whole lot of energy and effort on your part, that's going to start happening to remind you of the abilities that have been alive and well within us this whole freaking time that have been buried by the junk and the gunk of the contamination of our DNA and our energy signature. So lean into the weirdness. So guys, I guess the last thing that I'm going to just leave you with is the fact that, sleep and dream state definitely still going to be wackadoodle. Especially now with Neptune in his rulership and the Pisces energy, both of them rule over the dream state. Now that we're in Scorpio energy, though, I think that dream state is going to get more intense, specifically with some darker content in the dreamscape that we have to kind of get triggered and activated with in order to do the psychological unpacking work once we wake up. Again, shadow work season. What I would also want to say is that this week, it's not necessarily the wave that crashes over you where it fluctuates your temperature, but it's going to be a wave of energy that crashes over you that creates goosebumps. It's temperature and energy related. Yes, there's surges of energy coming in from, again, both natural and artificial sources that are going to jolt the central nervous system. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about literally just going about your day, walking through what feels like an invisible web of electricity and having your physical body give you signs and symbols of goosebumps or kind of a temperature fluctuation, but not really. You can have goosebumps without, going from hot to cold as intensely as we have been shifting. But there's going to be a physical marker that you walk through some sort of energy wave or energy web. Again, The closer that we get to the ending part of October, specifically where Halloween and the Day of the Dead comes into play, that is when the energy is most palpable. And I just want you to pay attention and be a little bit more aware of your surroundings and how your surroundings, whether you realize it or not, have an energetic impact on your physical form. And you can kind of see those signs and symbols through how your physical body reacts to something that we cannot see, but we can very much feel. And again, there's a heightened sense of sensitivity. There's a heightened sense of, weirdness and mystery and, mysticalness that will be popping off here this week. So guys, I think that's it. I think that's all I want to kind of talk about and cover here this week. Of course, I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have the best week that you could possibly have. I want you to stay mindful about some of the cautionary notes that I gave you as far as the mental plane goes. And of course, I just appreciate you being here, not only for me, but tuning in for yourself. Listening and being aware is, the very first step to doing the work, and observing how the energy actually manifests for you in the week to come is the second stage to that. And of course, when you're aware of the energy, then you just get to choose whether you're going to let the energy run your life or whether you're going to boss up, take power and control over it. I welcome you to choose the latter. I thank you for tuning in. I send you so much love, and we'll talk to you soon.